Buenos dias. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, team. How are you guys?
Good morning, good morning, muy buenos días a todos, muchas gracias. Estamos de nuevo aquí en nuestro live, los parceros de todos los martes de las 10 de la mañana. Como siempre, felices de verlos a ustedes aquí, llenos de energía, que estén llenos de salud y compartiendo este espacio con todos nuestros seguidores y las personas inversionistas que siempre están aquí para aprender y hacer buenas conexiones. Okay? But today we have special guest for Los Parceros Real Estate. But I'm gonna first, before we start talking about our topic today and introduce our guest, we are gonna give Cesar some time to share our life with his Facebook groups. uh, how are you, Irma, today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Super excited, to hear all about what Jim have to tell us, all the experience, all the journeys that he have done. And, I'm ready. I'm ready to learn and take advantage of, what he have gone through and try to avoid many mistakes.
Oh yes, definitely. And so please, Cesar, if you have something right now,
I'm
just
just
let us know.
sharing right now and just waiting here. I'm glad to have Jim over here with us today. Um, to keep learning basically, and that he's here to share with us all the information that he got that he's been doing during all these years as an investor.
Mhm.
So that'll be great.
Okay,
Well,
perfect. So
I
for today, so please, welcome Jim McClure. He's one of the investors with a lot of years of this beautiful profession. So he has more than 50 years right now investing, knowing how the market works. So today we are going to take a little advantage here. Also, we are so glad that he is with us today. So I want to talk about a little bit about what he has been doing and what he does right now. Okay, so he retired after 35 years of experience with the federal government as an IT professional, manager systems and development, contract administrations, personal management, labor unions, and representation of arbitration advocates. Okay, he currently serves key officers in several real estate investment firms. Okay, he began dealing in real estate. Hear this, since 1969. Can you hear that? Since 1969. Wow, what a huge pleasure to have those experiences with us that you can share. Always with Jim, I always say to him, Jim, one day I wish I can put like a microchip in your head and take it with me and put it here and that's it. So I won't make any mistake on investments. Okay, so
well,
so he personally participated in over 100 transactions involving homes, land, and trailers invested in North Carolina. Now he managed the property in 27 counties in North Carolina. Okay, but since 1991, he focuses exclusively in foreclosure. And here this: how invest with your self-direct IRAs, taking advantage of free taxes. That is the sweet here. Okay, so welcome to Mr. Jim
welcome.
Messer. Yes.
I cannot wait. Well, Jim, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Natalie, thank you very much. Hola and buenos dias to everybody. have very
Buenos
little
dias.
Spanish, but I try. That's out there. Um, yeah, I like Natalie had said, I've been around real estate for a long, long time. It was more of a hobby than it was a mainstream occupation or whatever, if you will. I was mainly busy in trying to work in the regular world, if you will, for a number of years to establish a retirement and things like that. But I dabbled in real estate. I first got involved with it actually um, in 1969, like Natalie had mentioned, but it was a disaster. I didn't know what I was doing. I had originally, when I was in the military, bought a trailer to live in down in Savannah, Georgia, and I got shipped overseas. And I said, "Well, I need to keep my home, but I've got to move it back to Illinois from where I was from." So I had it shipped, set up, and I thought, "Well, I'll just rent it out to somebody and become a landlord."
Mm,
Trouble is, when you're about 5,000 miles away, it's kind of tough to self manage anything that's out there. And I tried to get my parents involved with it, but they didn't want anything to do with managing rental properties. They didn't think that that's a smart move. And I didn't know enough about, well, getting, property managers, things like that, because I was only 20 at the time. So I thought, well, I'll just rent it out to somebody that was actually in the military at Air Force Base in Belleville, Illinois. But before I even deployed overseas, the people had moved in and they had totally trashed it in less than 30 days. And the landlord or the gentleman that had the land lease, if you will, he had the mobile home park, was out doing work and took his backhoe and actually plowed a hole right through the side of the trailer. And the trailer was only a year old. So immediately I started having problems that needed repairs. I needed somebody to take care of the tenant problem that I had. And I said, nope, can't find anybody right now. I'm under a short fuse. So I said, I'm going to dump and run. And at that time, it was a VA mortgage on a trailer. Back then, they would do that. And a
oh,
VA mortgage was fully assumable, no qualifications. They just take over the loan for people.
I did not
So
know that.
I found a buyer that was willing to buy it, but they didn't have money to reimburse me for. And since time ran out, I wound up paying them $1,500 to take the trailer from me. So I went backward on that transaction.
Yes.
And I said, nope, that's not going to be the way to do it. Um, Fast forward 4 years after that, while going to college, at the time, I was actually working for the Postal Service, and I was selected to negotiate a national contract, the first contract that IT people had in the federal government. It was actually in a union as such. And I had kind of come up through the ranks in that organization in probably a short period of time. It only took 4 years. But I wound up being the national representative to negotiate a contract. And that whole time I spent like 6 months in Washington, D.C., and the union picked up my salary. They picked up all my per diem, all my travel, all my food. I got per diem, but all of the union officers on their expense accounts needed to take an out of town guest to dinner. So every evening they took me to dinner. I didn't have to pay for any of it. At the end of the year, after everything was done, tax time rolled around. Oh, by the way, I also got my full salary working from the Postal Service. So I
Wow.
actually drew 2 salaries and all the per diem and everything. First mistake, no withholdings. When it got to the end of the year, I got ready to do a tax return. I found out I owed a lot of taxes as self-employed, even though the regular job that I had withholdings. The extra income was given to me on a 1099 that I had to pay all the taxes, the FICA, FUTA, SUTA, all of that stuff. My first lesson in taxes. Yeah, you got to prepare for this stuff.
Yeah.
So I asked a bunch of my fraternity fellow students, what can I do to, mitigate my taxes? And the answer was nothing. It's too late right now. You got to plan ahead of time. So I learned from that. I had to pay a lot of taxes that year. But at the same time, there was an article in a magazine called Money Magazine that had on the front cover 3 real estate investors on how to not pay income tax and making lots of money. Basically, I looked at that, read the articles, and I said, real estate really is the way to go. You just got to figure out how to maneuver through all of this processes. So I kind of got started. I bought a rental property. Well, actually, I bought a house with nothing down because I had the VA loan back again. And back then, money was getting tight for investors. And I had some money saved up. And I actually made a loan to another investor that was tied to the U.S. Treasury notes. And the Treasury notes actually went up to 18% at the time. And I loaned him the money, but every 3 months, the interest rates kept going up. But since my note was actually tied to it, his interest rates kept going up and up and up and up. And after 2 years, I made, a good income from it just on being a hard money lender. I didn't know a whole lot about it, but I knew enough that, if I loan people money, they got to pay me back. So
Somehow.
yeah, somehow either that or I get the property. He also
That's right.
mentioned that he started rehabbing a house. This was in St. Louis, Missouri. But since he didn't get permits, and St. Louis was really bad on that, they shut him down. And then they had to come out and inspect. The more they inspected, the more deficiencies they found, that he had to fix 3 times as much as what he originally started on. That's why it took him almost 2 years to get the thing done. In the meantime, I'm earning interest on it, but he's going backward. So you have to, that's a lesson on both sides we learned. Moving fast forward from that, in 1983, I wound up transferring to Raleigh, North Carolina in my job. Had a rental house. I sold it to an investor that was out there, and I came to Raleigh. I thought, okay, I'm going to do some investing on the side, part-time. And the first thing I had done is I had bought a townhouse when I came to Raleigh because you could not find housing. In 1984, every time a house hit the market, it was gone in less than 24 hours. There was so little housing available, and IBM was bringing in people right and left. So you could not find any housing. So I bought a townhouse and took 6 months to look for a house to buy while I was here. After I found a house, and here again, it was kind of like, I saw the house, put the offer in the same day it hit the market. And it was a full price offer. There was no negotiating of prices. And I wanted to jump in before they started competitive bidding to run the prices up, which you all have seen recently in the last few years. That has happened again. It runs in cycles in the real estate world. So always be aware of that. If you look at history in real estate, you'll see certain cycles of interest rates, of housings. They expand, then they have too many houses, and they have to contract. So they are very, poignant cycles that are out there if you watch for them. So anyway, we put the townhouse that I had bought on the market, and I had another partner that I had met. He was from Washington, D.C., but he was down here in Raleigh. We decided to do Airbnb in 1985.
Wow.
It did not work. We furnished the whole place on my townhouse, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, furnished it with everything, started advertising, come to find out, could not compete in the market. The reason being, Howard, Perry, and Walston, a large real estate firm here in Raleigh, had the contract with IBM to place all of the IBM people into rental units. So, I was fighting, an uphill battle. So after 6 months of trying it out, we said, nah, give up on that. We'll just rent it out normally. So I rented it out and got rid of all the extra surpluses, the silverware, the pots, the pans, the linens, all of that stuff. Just get rid of it. Not going to do me any good while it's there. But then I was in the rental business, in the landlord business. Here again, another major problem. A fire. Had a grease fire in the kitchen, burned up the entire kitchen. Fortunately, I had insurance on it. Had to get the people out. I got a whole brand new kitchen out of the results of it. But I thought, nah, it's kind of tough. So did that for a number of years. But it got a little tough in the competition. But in 1991, I had taken a class on foreclosures, and I went through that, but I did not have the time to do a lot of the work on it. So I ran into another investor. They actually ran a newspaper ad looking for a creative realtor. And at the time, I was a real estate broker. I got to look for properties. I thought, well, I need to be on the leading edge of this to find them when they first come up. So I went out and got a job part-time as a real estate broker. Well, back then it was a real estate agent because they had brokers and agents separately. I worked for Russell Gay, Century 21, and worked for 3 years part-time because he allowed for part-time people. But I got to noticing I could find and knew more about real estate market than a lot of the real estate agents out there because I would do a lot of research because I had time in the evenings and weekends. So after 3 years, I went ahead and got my own broker's license and started my own company. But still, buying some investment property, still being a landlord, still a lot of other headaches. But the competition ran the prices up too high, and they say the 1% rule for investors that if your rents cover 1% of your purchase price or your debt that you have, you're in a good position. And it does. It does a break even, and you do have a little bit of positive cash flow. The problem is a little bit of cash flow doesn't go very far the moment that you have a vacancy. You take a hit, and it takes you 3 months to recover, to get, other renters in there. Even if it's a month, 1 month's loss, say at $800, and you're only making $200 a month clear, you've gone backward 4 months on that transaction already. So I thought, the rental business is okay because I used it for 10 years to not pay any income tax whatsoever. I was a negative investor. I invested to take advantage of all the operating expenses, all the depreciation you can get, and offset all of my taxable income. A smart tax strategy, but not a good wealth building strategy, if you will. But at the time, I just wanted to avoid paying the taxes. I had gotten bitten several times paying high taxes. And I thought, well, I'm going to turn the table and not pay taxes. And you can do that, but you don't build a lot of wealth to do that. So as we progressed, I thought I need to figure out how to buy these properties cheap, because you make your profit when you buy the property. You don't make it when you sell it. That's after the fact. You need to make it when you start. And the best way to do that is you buy the properties right to start with. And to me, buying it right is cheaper than anybody else's property. I never paid market price again after that. We started buying foreclosures at the courthouse steps down here in Raleigh. In 1991, the very first one we bought was down in 5 Points area, Raleigh. Couldn't see the inside of the house because you just have to look at it from the outside of the street, keep your fingers crossed. But, the bid price seemed to be okay. I did comps around the area, what properties would be worth. I looked at the tax records. It said it was a 2-bedroom house. I thought, I don't know about 2-bedroom houses in the area, but most all the houses in that area, they were small bungalow houses. So we went ahead and bought it, changed the locks, went inside, no sheetrock. Kind of like a shock. Oh man, we got a lot of work to do. But my other partner was a general contractor. He also only did it part-time. He worked in IT as well for the state as a computer operator at night. But he wanted to get out of his day job, if you will, or his regular W-2 job and get into real estate. So off we went to rehab first house that we bought. And after in going through the entire rehab process, I slammed my thumb a couple times doing subfloor, putting that in with a hammer. And I put the hammer down and said, nope, I'm not going to do rehab anymore. That hurt too much. Unfortunately, we did rehabs afterwards, but they were cosmetic type, carpeting, painting, and then hiring other people to do the other labor type things for the people that had the right skills to get it done. You'll get it done a lot quicker that way when you hire the right people to get the jobs done. But we did it on our own to start with, just to learn the process. Then I thought, well, after we went through a few of those, we need to do the right way to do it. So we need to find the skilled people. So we started a construction company. My partner actually had the license. So we brought the license into our company, and then we were kind of off and running. The first foray that we went into, I bought 5 partially completed new homes at one time that came up for sale as a foreclosure. And the reason it was the builder had been killed in a car accident. And nobody else was there to take over the company. The lender, who was Carolina Building Supply Company, had the mortgages on the property. Back then, they were doing all the builder lending because of all the supplies that were being bought. So they were making the loans to the builders for all their materials. But the first thing they would do is to put a lien on it that put them in first position. So if there was ever any mechanics liens, any other issues, they're always first in line, and it was like a line of credit for the building supplies. So when the builder bought the lot, they would actually make the loan for him to buy the lot. So they were in first position always. Didn't matter if the subs wound up suing, putting mechanics liens on the property. If they ever had to take the property back because your lien was in superior position, you could either negotiate with those people for them to do it the way you wanted to do it, which they did. They'd tell plumbers, you want to get paid for your plumbing job? You come back in and finish it. And here's what we're going to pay you. Not what you're asking. We're going to pay you what we pay. So you got 2 options, walk away or do the job. If they didn't do the job and walked away, then the supply company would foreclose on the property and clean all the other liens and judgments off. Didn't matter how many there were on it. If you're in first position and it gets foreclosed, it eliminates all the other types of liens on your property. The only thing it doesn't eliminate is property tax. And if you're in the city, also city tax on property. But there are 2 separate types of taxes, county tax and city tax. I learned a lesson in that area. I bought a property at foreclosure, and it was a county tax lien downtown on Rock Quarry Road. I thought, oh, okay. Not a bad deal. I flipped it. I sold it to another investor. In that transaction, the city had a lien on the property for the cutting of the grass, things like that. Well, in North Carolina, when a foreclosure starts, they notify all the parties that are involved, particularly anyone that is subordinate to the lien holder. If they're superior, if there's a lien that's ahead of you, you don't have to notify them because whoever buys it's going to have to pay that lien off. So, but taxes wipe out all liens in North Carolina. So even though the city had a lien, which is a superior lien, and according to the statutes, they have to enjoin the sale, which means they have to join it together and be represented during that tax sale to get their money out of it. Durham does this all the time. Raleigh did not do it. Raleigh was notified. They failed to enjoin the sale. So officially, their lien was wiped off the books. I sold the property to an investor. Then the city sent him a letter saying, oh, you owe on this lien that we have on the property. I told him, no, you don't. The statutes are clear. They did not enjoin the sale. Therefore, you don't have to own it. Didn't take my word, which is fine because I'm not a lawyer. I don't give legal advice. I don't give financial advice. I don't give investing advice. I just talk about experiences. He went to his lawyer. His lawyer said, well, let me go to the city. Well, he talked to the city's attorney, the two of them, two attorneys. How do we collect taxes? How do we get paid? His attorney said, yeah, you need to go ahead and pay the city and clean this up. He didn't owe it, but he went ahead and paid the city and paid his attorney. And then he can go forward with his investment. He didn't have to, but he also didn't want to fight City Hall. I have a tendency to fight on a lot of things. I've fought the IRS 2 or 3 times. So far, knock on wood, I haven't lost a battle yet on that, but they've come after me 2 or 3 times for mistakes that I've made and for mistakes they've made over time. We did a lot of, like I said, we continued on doing now we're buying the foreclosures and rehabbing them and selling them. But all of that is almost like a job. The volume of it started picking up. It took up a lot of time. So my other partner actually wound up quitting his nighttime job and became a full-time general contractor. And he's still a contractor today. He works for Pulte Homes. That's in their new constructions. We kind of parted ways over time for investing because I don't want to rehab anything. I don't want to build anything. I just, I want to take the easier route. I've done all of those things. I also got involved in financing. We actually had bought a finance company, or actually started one. I didn't do the work, but there was a husband and wife team that worked for some local lenders. They wanted to start their own mortgage company. So the partner that I had that was, they had come down from Washington, D.C. that worked in the Postal Service with me. We decided, yeah, we'll fund a mortgage company. So we got into the mortgage banking business, if you will, becoming a mortgage lender and then a mortgage broker. Basically, they do the same thing, only one of them you can make your own independent loans, kind of like hard money lenders. And the other one is you're actually becoming a lending agent for a bank. And we had a bank in California that supported us, that made all the loans. But back in 2000, it was before the bust in 2008. It was probably in the late 90s, we had a crisis in the market and the bank shut down. So we had no lenders to back us up. So we quit making loans and went out of business. But we did that for a number of years. But I learned, the creative types of financing, things like that. And I actually did a number of loans myself as second mortgages to those loans that we were giving out as first mortgages. Risky business. Don't do it. None of them panned out that was out there, But at the time, since there was a first mortgage in front of my mortgage, our mortgages are real small, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 type of things. When the first mortgage wound up foreclosing, I could go pay the $100,000 mortgage off to recover my $5,000. or just take it as a write-off. So I took those as a write-off, as a loss, rather than putting my money in to try to recover it and then figure out reselling the house. But since then, I've kind of learned too, there's some ways you can actually take it to your advantage that's out there if you're in position. So moving forward from that, we got out of the construction business, we got out of the lending business. I also got out of the real estate sales business. You know, real estate agents work really hard, but they don't get paid a lot of money. People think they do because it's a glamour job. You know, they all look beautiful. They all have the fancy cars and all of that stuff. And all of these investors that want to sell people stuff, that's what they do with their pictures. You know, I got my Maserati in the back, you know, I got my big house in the back of the picture, and I be like me and make all the money. Well, half of those, they don't really do that, but it's the show. And I've learned over time, I vet just about everybody that I deal with. If you got an LLC and you want to buy one of my properties, I'm going to make sure you're current in this state. I'm going to look at your credit. I'm going to, you know, dig into your background to see how legitimate you are. And we have people that comes to our organization that Natalia met me there, I guess, through TRIA, that we will have investors come in and people will give sales pitches on their stuff. Well, there was a guy that did a sales pitch a number of years ago from Fayetteville. He was a real estate investor, and he showed us this big check, you know, that he made $96,000 profit on his property when he sold it. Well, that was the closing check, but little was said about, well, how much did he pay? How much did he invest in it? I did some background checks. His company wasn't even licensed in this state to operate, you know, but he was selling his course for $500 to learn how to buy a foreclosure and flip it. So, you know, I just do that for just about everything I do. I want to investigate, check the backgrounds of things, make sure it's legit. I've had people present themselves as builders here in TRIA. You know, we want to vet them out. The thing we ran into was, show me your license. Oh, they didn't have they didn't answer for like 2 weeks. And
They went and applied for it.
Right. But what I did, I went to the Builders Association to look up the license. No license. I do the same thing with realtors. Anybody that's licensed in the state, I go to look, see if they have licenses. I used to have all of those licenses. I don't have any of them anymore. I got rid of all of them. The reason being, all of the professionals are regulated by all these other agencies. And those agencies have strict rules that you have to follow. And I don't like following the rules a lot of times. I like operating in the gray area or on the peripheral things. And I don't have a problems trying to stretch the interpretation of things that are out there. But these agencies don't like it. And if somebody complains, then you're on the hook to come back and defend it, whatever you're doing. And it may be legal, but they don't like it because of either their ethics rules, or they're trying to protect the consumer. They're not trying to protect the realtor or the builder or the lender. They're trying to protect the consumer. And the way to protect them is, oh, well, we're going to fine you. You got to take 2 continuing education classes and pay a fine. Where's that fine go? It didn't go to the consumer. It went back to the commission or the state or wherever. So I said, nah, I don't need any of that stuff either. So I got rid of all those licenses. I do have a corporation license. I have still 3 of them that are out there and active. I had 8 at one time. I got rid of them because some of them were shell companies that we used to buy something and flip a property in. The liability stays in that company. So there are companies that actually do that. They buy their property in one entity and then flip it, whatever. And if it ever comes back that there was a title issue, things like that, they go after that company. And it's a shell company because it has no other assets in it. So yeah, go ahead and sue the company. I can close the company. Builders do that all the time. They start a company, they get in trouble, they close down, they just start another company. It only costs them what, $125 with the Secretary of State, start a new company and walk away from $10,000, $20,000 worth of debt and problems. You know, they're going to have to go after the individual to get the money. If monies are owed, they got to pierce the corporate veil, meaning they got to prove that you weren't operating as a business, you were operating as an individual. And the quickest ways to do that, if you have an LLC, and there's a good attorney that's out there, a tax attorney, John Heyer, he's been to TRIA 2 or 3 times, says if you have a business like an LLC, operate and make it look, feel, and smell like a business. What does that mean? Everybody that has an LLC, do you have an annual meeting like a corporation does? Even if you're a single member LLC, in my corporations, I don't have LLCs. I have corporations instead as a subchapter S for tax purposes, but I already know how corporations run. So I just set mine up that way. They operate the same, but I also have an annual meeting with the stockholders, which is me. I'm the sole stockholder of it. You should do the same thing in your LLC, that you have your annual meeting, you document it. I had a meeting, I have voted myself as chairman or whatever your title is in your organization, you know. And then for us in our corporation, I'm the stockholder. The stockholders elect the board of directors. I'm the director. The directors elect the officers. Well, I'm the officer that was elected, but I have to document that every year. So that, and I've been, you know, sued 2 or 3 times, and that was the main thing the attorney went for. He went to pierce the corporate veil to prove that I didn't do any of those things, so therefore I wasn't operating as a corporation. When I produced the paperwork on it, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I can't pierce the corporate veil. Now let me go see if I can attack the company and get whatever assets the company owns. And I forgot what the original case was. Somebody was claiming that I didn't own the property properly and didn't make disclosures that you're supposed to when you sell a property. So what had happened in that particular case, the attorney went through and asked, well, on all of these companies you have, what's the holding value? I said, well, how much? He wanted to know how much do they make. I said, probably no more than $5,000 a year. He didn't ask for copies of the tax records. He just asked, what did these holding companies make? Well, the holding companies didn't make a lot when I was doing this back then, because I had liquidated everything. You know, in the past, yeah, they made money, but after you liquidated, they have nothing. So when you let it sit for a year, what was your last year's income? 0. Didn't make anything, but I still had to pay the state to keep it alive. So he went to go for the corporation, but he still, you know, ran up against a brick wall because the assets were all protected. Any assets in there were fully encumbered with debt that was superior to his judgment. So even if he took a house that we owned and sold it at the courthouse steps, they're still going to have to pay off the lien that's on it, no matter who buys it. So a good lawyer's not going to tell you, yeah, I'm going to take the house and charge you the money to get it back and then sell it, and then nobody buys it at the auction. And sometimes that happens when the debt that's superior to your lien is more than it's worth going after. So, and that's just because of the lien priorities that are out there. So, anyway, I went through that.
Yes.
Are there any questions so far?
Yes, Jim. I've been taking notes because a lot of things you have been talking, very interesting things. And I want to bring this. Even if you start like years ago, like because you start on your 20s, right? So I keep in my mind saying like, okay, real estate is still the same thing, the same game. It's
Mhm.
a matter of know. It's a matter of have a good team because you have been mentioned like a you like you were searching for a good advice, and then you found a magazine, a money magazine,
Did I
talking
find
about
what?
a money magazine, money market magazine. Yes, you found like a money magazine because you were looking for tips on real estate, on how to invest, right? When you were on your 20s.
Okay, I didn't catch the last part. That in the 20?
Irma, can you repeat the question?
So what she's saying is that on your 20s, you were looking and you found the magazine where, the
Right.
newspaper
Okay.
that you kind of, and that was on your early 20s when that happens.
Right.
What else, Nancy?
Yes, yes, on your early 20s. But since that, I mean, you find like how to not to avoid, but to take advantage of a tax on your taxes. Yes.
Right.
So nothing is new right now. I mean, everything is still the same. Just you need to be a skin on the game and have a good team. That's what I learning from you right now. But it's to have a strategy and prepare of on time when because you start doing like a crazy things or investing or buying and flipping, but at that time you didn't know how to take advantage. But then you figure out that okay, if I want to have save some money and make some more money, so you need to prepare on time and have a good strategy in taxes, for example. Then you start real estate classes and foreclosure classes. So then you start figuring out, oh, okay, I need to do this, I need to do this. But the best thing is like you went to the people who were very knowledge on the subject, on the topic. So that's what I always say to my customer, my clients, please go to the people who knows, be around with the good people who has the experience.
Hmm.
So I think that's what the I mean, lo más importante, the best or the most important thing to do on
Yeah.
investment side. Mhm.
And Jim, I do have a question. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have a lot of questions as well,
Yes.
but what is it that Jim is doing right now currently after all the experience, after everything that you have done? What is it that you're doing right now? What is it that you see that is working for you right now after all the experience that you went through?
Okay. Yeah, I'll answer that question plus the one I see up on the screen that right now I think we're sitting on a real estate bubble.
Okay.
I think the market's going to crash. And after I went through all of these other experiences of building, of lending, of real estate sales, of property management, all of those things, I got to the point that I'm said, you know what? All of those are like jobs and you got to work at it. I said, I'm lazy. I don't want to have to do that. I want to take the easiest route to make the most benefit out of it and earn the most. So I kind of looked around and said, well, what is it that's out there that would be easy, and who makes the most money? And I got to looking at banks because I'd also bought into a bank a few years after that. But owning stock in a bank is not the same as being the bank.
That's
Far,
right.
far different cry. So I learned to buy the properties cheap But then I thought, well, I want to be able to set it up where I have passive income
Okay.
and easy income. Being a landlord, you're responsible for maintenance and taxes and insurance, all of those type things. I've experienced all of that. The fires at the properties. I've had shootings at the properties. I've had drug deals going down.
Mm,
All of those things in these rental properties. I don't want that anymore.
I can
So
relate.
what I've kind of ventured into now, and if I had it to do over, I'd do it a little bit differently, but I would do the same thing, but with a different tax strategy. Right now,
Okay.
what we do is we'll buy the foreclosures that are out there, and I buy usually tax foreclosures because they're the cheapest. We also
Okay.
buy mortgage foreclosures, but mortgages have higher dollars that you got to put into the deal. I've seen houses sell for $750 at a tax sale. I've seen houses buy, $200,000, but then your money is tied up. I want to leverage my money as best I can, so
Yeah.
I buy the cheaper stuff that's out there. But then, how do I get my return on investment? And I did a TRIA presentation, and I think some of you probably had been there for that. And how to become a millionaire in 5 years, have $120,000 per year income with holding over $1 million of assets. And my son and I got that one started. We would buy a foreclosure cheap. He bought one down in Fayetteville. He paid $18,000 for his first deal in November, or it might have been October. But by the end of the year, we had sold it for like $68,000. How did I sell it for so much more? I didn't rehab it. We just cleaned the inside of it out because it was fairly decent, but it was a double-wide mobile home down in Fayetteville. But we sold it, and the reason we could sell it for more than what we paid for it was owner financing. We owner financed it. We became the bank. And we sold it with owner financing where they only put $6,000 down on the deal. Well, we only had like $12,000 tied up into the property, and they're making payments of $500 and something per month. Back then, we did what they call an investor financing rule, if you will. They called it the 10-10-10. When you sell something, 10% down, 10% interest for 10 years, owner financing. And we were able to sell that property. That one was a pretty good deal. Usually what we do is whenever we buy something, we would sell it for 3 times more than what we paid for it. And actually, we got to the point we didn't do any work on the property. Some of them I wouldn't even clean the trash out of it. But it was the financial terms that you could offer people. And we would do it such that their payments were less than what they were paying for rent, so that they're going to wind up building equity. I had one gentleman down there actually did that in another trailer that we bought. We paid 30 something for it and sold it to him for like 68, 69,000, somewhere in there. He lived in it for a year, put new carpeting, painting, but lived in it, paid his payments of $600 or $700 per month that he got to deduct the interest off his taxes. He flipped the property for 160. I got our 60 out of it. He made $100,000 off of that transaction and moved on to his next deal. So everybody profited from that type arrangement.
Good.
And we started accumulating properties like that because it became passive income. It's nothing you can quit your day job on when you do 1, 2, and 3. But the objective was build up enough of those such that you have passive income that's more than your day job. And then you can quit your day job and sit back and earn from your investment properties.
Jim, I do have a question because I know you buy a lot of tax foreclosures. How did you protect yourself on the title search? Did you do a title search before your purchase? How did that work?
Yeah, I do a title search before I buy anything just to see what's out there. But I know the tax sale is superior to any other mortgages, liens, and judgments. It's even
Okay.
superior to an IRS tax lien. So if they're selling it with that, you're going to be superior to all the other liens. There's still risk involved. The reason being, if they didn't notify all the proper owners of record, they can come back later and sue to try to get their property back. A good
Mm,
example would be husband and wife owns a house. They separate, but they didn't separate the properties as such. Years down the road, they foreclose on the husband, but they only notified the husband. They didn't notify the wife of the tax sale. So she still owns half the house, even though it got sold as such. But there's also some statute of limitations on the books that bars any claims that come out there. And I'm not claiming to be a lawyer, but it's, from my understanding, it's like a year. If there's an error in that sale, if you catch it within the year, they can come back and kind of undo it or whatever type
that's
thing.
right.
But I look at the foreclosure file when they're going through it just to see if they're notifying all the people that I think should have been notified. And some of them, they might notify 50 people, particularly on
Wow.
heir property, when there was like 50 grandkids or 50 owners down that chain of title. And if they can't find the owners in North Carolina, they allow them to foreclose through publication. They post it in the local newspaper. Everybody is supposed to keep the taxing authority informed of where they are. It's their responsibility, not the county's responsibility to track you down. It's your responsibility, if you have property, to make sure you pay the taxes. If you don't, and they can't find you to notify you, they'll post it in the newspaper as a public notification. And that's
Mm,
covered in the statutes. So they can foreclose on it that way. And, you know, if you catch it within a year, you can come back and claim I have my rights, but you got to hire a lawyer. You got to take it to court. You got to do all of that stuff.
okay.
One of the other ways we protect ourselves from chain of title issues, that every property that we buy now is in its own individual trust. I don't buy them in my corporation. If you have too many properties in your corporation, you get sued and lose. They get access to all of those assets, not just the house that started it. They get access to all of those assets.
So Jim, before when you're closing this property, right? You're closing under a trust. You don't close it under an LLC or anything like that. Is that what you're
Correct.
doing? Okay.
Right.
Okay. That's very smart. Let me ask you one more question, Jim.
Sure.
How can anybody get into that? How can somebody that's looking to get into that? What would be the best advice for these people?
There's actually some tax sale courses that are out there.
Okay.
It's kind of, the course itself is not that expensive. I thought it was expensive at the time because I'm cheap. You know, my foreclosure course that I took, my son actually bought it. He paid $50, and it was on audio tapes.
Oh,
There was like 12 of them, and it walks you all the way through foreclosures in general. But you need
Okay.
to know what's specific for your state. The thing I would
Okay.
do in this state is go get the statutes that cover foreclosures,
Okay.
get the statute that covers mortgages, get the statute that covers taxes. Tax
Okay.
statutes is one of the largest, but in there they will talk about the authority for selling of the property when it's in default. That's what you want to hone in on.
Okay.
The YouTube videos are out there. It's free to everybody now that's out there. The U.S. tax court or U.S. tax sales course that was out there. My son and I bought it. We went to a 2-day seminar that they had here, and it was kind of like one of these upsell classes that you go to. You come and spend 2 days. The last half of the second day is all sales pitch.
Mm.
And we said, yeah, we'll sign up for the week course. We signed up for a week course. It cost like $800. Wasn't that much. But here again, it was another upsales. When they got done with it, well, we will help hold your hand through the whole process. And we'll guarantee you'll buy the properties and we'll guarantee you'll make the money. But they sold it in levels: platinum level, gold level, silver
Oh,
level,
wow.
$40,000, and we'll guarantee you'll be able to buy the tax sales, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
So they
Wow.
sit you down one-on-one for their hard pressure sales. The guy they set me down with, and it was a family-run business, they know what they're doing. But I don't really appreciate the pressure type sales.
Yeah.
I asked the guy that was trying to sell me the course, how many have you done? Oh, he hadn't done any yet. He was the father-in-law of the guy that ran the company.
No.
I had already done some tax sales in South Carolina and North Carolina. But,
He was a
that's when
good
I
seller.
knew. Yeah. So I was kind of vetting them out. Well, how many have you personally done? If you're the expert, you tell me what you've done. And then I will go and investigate it to make sure you did what you said you did.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Well, Jim,
Yeah,
I know
I will
there's a lot of questions here. I can ask a lot of questions, but Leah, can we?
Oh, yes. Erika, question. Yes,
Okay.
Erika Salgado, thank you, Erika, for being here. And she is asking this. Based on your experience with real estate cycles, what cycle do you think we are currently in, and where do you think we are headed towards as investors?
Okay. Yeah, right now we're sitting at the top of the bubble and it's starting to turn. For a number of years, since I tracked foreclosures quite heavily, now we do it, across the state, but there are more and more government foreclosures showing up. For like 5 years, they held the foreclosures in abatement. Even before COVID hit, they were tightening up. They were doing loan restructuring with people. And there was a case that was out there that I had seen on the internet where Fannie Mae loans, they were refinancing people who got in trouble to restructure their loans. Those people didn't make a payment. After 5 years, they said, oh, we're going to have to foreclose. 5 years, no payments in your house while you're living there free on a government loan. They restructured it, said, okay, now you got to start making payments. Nope. 5 years more went by, no payments. The government did not want to flood the market with all of these loans that was out there. So what they did, they held them all in abeyance. Well, that means the government is footing thousands of properties held that are non-performing assets that are out there. People are still living in them rent free. So now that's come to an end. And I'm starting to see more and more of those properties coming up for foreclosure on the websites that are out there, the auction.coms, the Hutchins. There's like 4 or 5 auction sites that are out there that are liquidating them. The federal government used to sell all their own, but they're outsourcing all of it now. So you're going to see more and more of those mortgages coming on the market for sale. It's an opportunity for investors to jump back in to buy if you're going to be buying in that arena. It's going to be a little bit more expensive because I don't know of any mortgages that are under $5,000. Government won't even make a loan now under $50,000.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, those are coming up, and that's where I would be targeting. Also, we're looking at commercial areas coming up because we think that's going to hit as well. There are commercial properties coming up. We own a few of those, but most commercial properties like shopping centers, they have no debt. They're owned by hedge funds, things like that. They're getting return on their investment of 5% cap rates. Earning 5% on a transaction to me is not a good deal. Earning $200 positive cash flow on a rental is not a good deal when you can make 30% return on your money. I've got some of them that and most all of our investments are have a break even of 4 years or less. And if I have a 10-year mortgage or 20-year mortgage, 30-year mortgage, after 4 years, everything else is pure profit. I have all my capital back. So that's kind of the way we operate. If I were to do it over again, instead of doing it in my corporation and paying taxes as pass through in my S corporation, which passes the taxes back to me at my personal tax basis, I would do it in Roth retirement accounts. Solo 401ks, IRAs, those type of things. I do quite a bit of that now, but that means all of those transactions are tax free when they're in a Roth. So you can make the same amount of money and it's tax free. So,
Yeah.
more questions? How do I find those deals? Like I said, every courthouse has it posted on their bulletin board. Every county, they have to publish it in the local newspaper of the sales coming up. You can go there. You can look online. You can get on mailing lists for the counties that are doing tax sales. You can get on mailing lists of the major foreclosing corporations, if you will. The lawyer firms that are doing the foreclosures and the corporations, Williams and Williams, Hutchins and Shapiro and Engel is another one. Auction.com, get on their mailing list. They'll mail you every week of all the stuff coming up. It's out there.
Wow. That's a very good information.
Yeah. Tax lien. Every county publishes their tax liens. Some of them will actually, have a mailing list, and some of them said, well, we're not going to do the mailing list. They've started their own little website on the county. You can go to the county and query foreclosures. Go to the tax office. That's where you're going to find this information. And they'll list either they got foreclosures going on, or no, you have to. There's a law firm that there's two major law firms that handle those across the state that do the eastern part of the state and the western part. And it's on their website. They used to mail them out, but they got too many of them. So now you just have to go to their website and look and see what they have scheduled for foreclosure. They may not all come up because people can pay their back taxes and stop the sale, but they're out there, so it gives you a lead what to be looking for, where to go.
So Jim, let me ask you this when you said people can pay their taxes. So you can have this property on their contract, but if they go and pay the taxes before you close, that deal, how do that work?
Yeah, you if you were buying at the courthouse steps and you had the bid and the people pay or come in and pay the taxes. In North Carolina, we have a redemption period for foreclosures, which is 10 days. That's why the auctions remain open for 10 days for anyone to come in and upset the bid by 5% and raise it up. Whether it doesn't matter if it's a mortgage sale or tax sale, they're handled both the same when it hits the courthouse for the sales. And that keeps the clock running. Every time it's upset, another 10 days. Every time somebody keeps upsetting it, the price goes up by 5%, but also the clock stays open and they can redeem it within that 10 days. After those 10 days are done and the courts approve the sale, and the sale might be 12 days down the road, they can redeem it up until the time the courts have approved finalization of that sale. I've had one of them actually overturn that one because they declared bankruptcy and federal law trumped the state law in that case and got it pulled back out. So the investor didn't get the property. They got all their money back, but then the person could liquidate and settle the taxes that way. But it's rare that you can open up a foreclosure once the courts have closed it for you.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Very nice. Very good information too. I was taking notes, actually.
Yes.
That's great. Well, yeah. Something interesting, Jim, is about the IRA or the Roth, the solo. How do you actually work this out?
How do I work it out?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Okay. I've had I started my IRAs back in 1974 when I got hit with all those taxes with the contract for the unions. And I thought, oh, well, now they just passed a law that says you can put money in a savings account and take the tax deduction for it. But that's tax deferment down the road. Anything that's a traditional deferred taxing where you get to deduct it now, you pay the taxes later when you take it out. So in, I don't know, 1986, they changed the tax law that says, oh, we got a new category. It's called Roth. And you can put your money in, pay your taxes now. It's in a retirement plan, but you don't have to pay taxes on the growth or the money when you take it out. I would do all of those with the Roth. I had a number of IRAs that I invested properties in. But I liquidated all of those over time and converted them into Roth, paid the taxes on it, and then kept it in a Roth account and still investing with it. Take the money, go buy another property. There's certain prohibited transactions you would have to know, though. You need to know the law on how to do the investing in a Roth or an IRA. And there are custodians out there that they have free education information on their websites that you can go look and learn from it. And some of them will actually do the transactions for you. Those are custodians that hold all of the assets themselves. They hold the money. You just direct them what to be done. Okay, that's a self-directed IRA, but it's not a solo IRA. The solo
Jim, I had a question for you. Jim, which company do you use to manage all this solo IRA?
Okay, I used Equity Trust Company because I was with them before they even became Equity Trust Company. They were the Bank of Ohio, a trust department that actually managed that. And I still have them. I don't like them because their fees are expensive. It's based upon the total asset value that's in your account. And it gets pretty expensive, but it's still okay to have it. I also use Census Finance out of California for my solo 401k. I interviewed several of the solo 401k companies, but I had a series of about 30 questions. And I would ask them, the outer edge questions. Some of the conservative people, oh, no, you can't do that. No, it's not that you can't do it. They don't advise doing it because they don't want to get caught if it's wrong by the IRS ruling, because it could have impacted their licensing of it. So I would ask them certain questions, and some of them they couldn't really answer. Oh, they'll get back with me, or they'll just flat out say, "Oh, you can't do it that way." Well, yeah, you can. If you read the law, I go read the tax statutes. And not the handbooks and brochures. I actually read the not the Internal Revenue Code, the U.S. code, which is the tax code. And it has a lot of loopholes in it if you start reading it right. Anytime you see it says may, that's permissive. That's not mandatory. That's permissive. Or if it says usually, if it says usually, it means there's an exception somewhere. Go find that exception. But most brochures you see never list the exception. They just tell you what they see. But you have to look behind the scenes to find those exceptions. Census Finance was the only one that could answer all of my questions. And when the gal that interviewed me, or I interviewed her, couldn't answer the question, she said, "I don't know the answer to that one. I will get back with you on it." The president of the company told me that night. Yes.
Jim, may I ask you? can you share with us those questions so people who is watching us right now can look at those questions? Maybe they can use those questions to go around for the people who is interested to open or has solo one a 401k or sort of IRA?
Yeah. Send me a
guys,
text. Send
Perfect.
me a
So
text
guys,
so I'll remember it.
You hear Mr. Max Flor here. So the people who is hearing right now, you can leave your email. So then Leah can share the information with you guys. Muchas gracias. Okay, so how is the time right now? So now, wow, more than an hour right now.
Yeah, we're over.
Yes. Yes.
How much time did you allow? 1 hour?
Usually, yes, it's an hour. Yes, usually it's an
Okay.
hour. But I think right now we have many other topics that we can talk in another meeting with you in another live because there are a lot of things, a lot of details that we can, pues, I mean, take advantage. I mean, like learn from you because you know, I mean, very clear all where the information it is and how to use all that things to have more I don't know like how can you say it, Irman, like in your favor, yes, in your favor, that's what I'm trying to say, yes.
Good. Jim, but I do want the last thing for you and for the people that wants to start in real estate, like the people that already in real estate and they feel like they're just been doing a lot of mistakes and they want to quit. What would it be one advice that you want to give the people that want to give up on real estate?
Hmm. That's interesting because I have run across a couple people that gave up. Um, let me frame it for you.
Okay.
An individual that was a member of TRIA wanted to leave their day job, but they didn't know how to calculate and back into what do I need to do. So you take their what they needed to live on or what their income they wanted, and then hypothetically take that dollar amount and divide it by the number of properties that would earn, say, $500 a month earnings, just for figuring it up. And they came up when they added all that up, that's 6,000 a year per property, and they wanted to make 175,000 a year. So they whatever that came up to be, I forget what the number was, like 15, 20, something like that. You need to have 15, 20 properties that earns you that amount of money, and then get started in that. And they did that, but there was a lot of learning through the whole cycle that goes with that. So, but they were treating them more like rental properties, giving them the headaches. So I kind of convinced them, nah, why don't you do it the other way, where you're the bank instead of becoming just the landlord on it, and it made it a lot easier. The thing is, they also did it. They started putting it into their Roth IRAs, and the money's there. But the trouble is, they can't draw it out till they're 59 and a half. So you need to do both. You need to have one that's a future and one that's a current to live on.
Yeah.
So they've got that, and they did quit their day job, but now they're looking for something to do, but they don't think that real estate is it, because they just kind of went along for the ride on it, but they've kind of lost the excitement and thrill of it. And it can get kind of boring if that's all you're doing is collecting payments and doing
Yeah.
nothing.
And that one, right?
But it's a boring job I like.
Jim, I think we're aligned on this and the importance, right, that to have a goal and see where you want to go with real estate, because real estate, there's so many ways, so many creative ways that you can be in real estate. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just you have to be very creative in real estate, and so you don't quit.
Yeah, and you wind up focusing on things you like doing.
Yes.
I tried all the different things in real estate and found out after a while that some of them get to be a headache. Real estate sales, you got to deal with picky customers,
What about property management? How did you
Oh,
like
yeah, same there. I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. There was a gang fight over at Central University in Durham, and you need to come over here and patch up all the bullet holes in the building. At 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. So I said, no, I don't want to do that. The construction
Very
work,
good.
busting my thumb. I don't want to do that anymore. So I migrated to the easiest thing that I could do. It's pretty easy to go out there, find a property. You have to be able to know how to assess it to know if it's going to wind up being a good deal or not. So you learn on that aspect. And then you
Yeah,
have to figure out how do you exit out of the transaction, not
that's right.
leaving it, but how do you convert it into revenues? And that's when we got into the lease options long term, and we did the mortgage financing long term. But if you do too many mortgages in your own name, since we had a banker's license, if you do more than 5 mortgages in any one entity in the year, you need to get a banker's license. So you couldn't do more than 5 loans in a year without getting a banker's license. Well, what's the way around that? Have more entities. I had 8 companies.
Yeah.
That's right.
I could do 40 mortgages a year. The more companies I had, the more mortgages I could do.
That's
But that
right.
got to be a headache when Dodd-Frank came in. Dodd-Frank said, no, you can't do that. No, we don't want you individuals to be lenders. We only want the banks to do this. And we regulate the banks. So we passed a law that says you individual can't do it, and we'll control all the banks. Well, that's the federal government or any municipality regulating their citizens. And you'll find out that's one of the other things we kind of look at. My son brought me into this is, kind of challenging the government on everything. They take away your God-given rights. Therefore, we want to keep all the rights that we have and not give any to any government. We do it as citizens. We elect somebody to represent us, and then they spend the rest of their life trying to stay in their jobs, taking our tax money. I don't like paying the taxes. I don't like getting those
I
preferred
love
votes.
that. And
So I
Jim,
look. Go ahead.
one more thing in here. How important is for us to make mistakes as investors?
How do you what?
Um, make mistakes. A lot of people don't want to make any mistakes in this business.
Oh,
But what would
everybody
you
will make
what would you
mistakes.
say about
Everybody.
that?
Yeah. Um, some of the best ways is whatever you want to try to do, go look to see what other people have done. See what education materials are available that they've already done those type things, and learn from that before you even jump into it. It would be great if you had mentors that you could follow behind type arrangements. Those are harder to find, but it happens in the corporate world. Everybody
Yeah.
has mentorships, things like that. Um, one of my neighbors was a lawyer that worked in a private practice firm, but then he got hired by Progress Energy, and because he knew about nuclear lawsuits and things like that, he was pretty good at it. Um, and then he did so well that the Progress Energy has their own mentorship program for
Mhm.
senior executives. He got
Mhm.
into that program and wound up being the chairman of Progress Energy when it got done. But he couldn't do it without the mentorship process. And unfortunately, the president of Progress Energy died unexpectedly early, so he had to step up quickly. So, but
Wow.
yeah, having mentors or following what other people have done. Uh, there's tons of YouTubes out there, but just be careful. Take it with a grain of salt because they're only going to give you the positive.
That's
They're
right.
not going to give you the pitfalls. And I did a presentation for TRIA, and it was called The Pitfalls of Foreclosures. Everything that can go wrong. I've experienced a lot of those. So I've learned a lot of that myself through personal experience.
And
I
I
try to
think,
share that with people.
Jim, yeah, and I think, Jim, that I would love to have you again. We would love to have you again in here and tell us all about those mistakes, because not everything in real estate is pretty, not everything that, we tell everybody it's that sweet.
Mhm.
We all that are being in this business, have make a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
and we had to correct it and pay for it. In some cases, we have to pay for it. You pay
Right.
for 1,500, for somebody to come and get your house out of the land.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think that we would love to hear all that, because that's how we learn, right? That's how we
Mhm.
protect ourselves as well, because we hearing from somebody that's been through that, I think that will help us to avoid those mistakes, at least the same mistakes, because in real estate, anything can go wrong from, anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, the word said it, right? Investing. So,
Yeah. And
so,
in the military, we used to do called after action actions or reports, that after you got done with a mission, you came back and evaluated what worked, what didn't work, what to plan for in the future to make changes to it. And the same thing. The only thing I don't see out there is a central place that all of those gotchas are listed to help people not do that. That could be that somebody can say, here's all the things not to do in the real estate world and publish it. I don't know. It could be
right?
out there.
I would love
An
to.
idea for somebody.
I would love
Could be
to
something
hear
there.
those things, because we all, the being investors, have one thing that went wrong.
Hmm.
Everybody. So, and I think that we all got caught up on the good things that everybody says, and everybody says that real estate is super easy, real estate, but
No.
real estate is not easy. Real estate takes a lot of courage, a lot of um I would say mistakes, a lot of lessons, but
Yeah.
real estate is good, but you just have to learn how to navigate through, those things or those humps every
Right.
day.
Right. Yeah, because the real estate world really has tightened up in all kind of rules and regulations. When I
Yes.
was a broker, our contract was 3 pages. Now
Oh
look
my
how
god.
many pages you all this disclosure stuff you got to do.
Oh
As an
no.
investor, I don't have to do that.
Yeah,
As a realtor, you do. And I've
that's
actually had the
true.
real estate commission tell me every real estate agent that sells their own property cannot put no representation on the property disclosure forms.
Hmm.
They have the right to come after any real estate broker that put that on the form. You have a higher responsibility to disclose to the public the deficiencies in the properties that you own. But they're not, you know, they haven't, they have the right to do that. Have they done it? I don't know. I don't get any of their brochures anymore. That's the same with the IRS. The IRS is saying certain things. You can't do certain things in the tax code, but it has never been tested in court and they haven't brought a lawsuit yet. So it's,
Mm.
and there's a difference in the termination. One is called legal and the other one's called lawful. Legal, from my understanding, is it's on the books. You can't do this. Lawful means it's been interpreted by a court adjudicating the interpretation that says it is real. Because just because it's posted doesn't mean that it's correct. And the IRS is bad at that. They took me to court. I won
Very
because,
good. I would love to hear about that one, about that case.
yeah. Well, I did
Wow.
I got stung by doing a late tax return. I did tax returns for 8 companies. I do all the taxes. I'll do it quickly. Um, I filed my extensions. I stapled them all together as one. They only processed one, and the other 7 they never looked at. They fined me on 7 of the companies being late. So I appealed, went through the appeal process, And I finally convinced them here's my copies. I know I turned them in. They went and found them because they keep all of those hard copies that you turn into them. They keep them. So they found them and waived it and got out of it. Well, one year I forgot to file the tax extension on one of my companies. I was wrong. They were right. I didn't file. $1,700 fine. I appealed it. Why did I appeal it? I filed a correction to my tax return. The IRS statute says you have 3 years to amend your tax return. I amended my extension. I went back retroactively. They said, you can't do that. I said, sure you can. It's right here in the manual. It says I can amend my tax return. An extension is part of the tax return. We went all the way up to trial until the point was they did, because if they lose in trial, that sets a precedent for everybody. You can cite that. That becomes lawful, not law. And the IRS tax manual is not law. That's their interpretation of the law. The brochures are their interpretation of how to administer it. It's not the tax law. So you have to look at the tax statutes. They backed off of that because I found also that if I failed to do something, they were supposed to notify me in writing. And when I brought that up, they said, oh, we hadn't done that in years. Well, it's still in your manual. It's not in the handbook. It's in your manual you were supposed to do it, but you're not practicing what your manual tells you you're supposed to do. Well, they changed their manual. They also changed if you look at now the rules for extensions in the tax brochure, it says you cannot retroactively amend your extension.
Thanks to Jim. Thanks to Jim.
I'm not afraid to challenge them, and they know that.
That's very good, Jim. And Jim, so you learn all this, you study all those books, or you read books. How do you stay up to date with all your knowledge, all of your codes and everything?
Well, I have some realtor friends who wants to get rid of their continuing education courses booklets.
Okay.
I'll go read that to find out what's the latest going in that area. Also, there's some attorneys out there that will give you updates to some of the laws that are out there. There's a tax attorney, Phillips. I'm trying to think what his first name is. I'm on his mailing list. He's selling courses on how to do asset protection, things like that. But when they started making changes to the tax code out there, they would send out notices and brochures. Here's what's the latest coming up. It would be great if I could get the updates from the legal professions, but there's a couple of them out there that will hold seminars, like John Heyer will, in conjunction with Equity Trust Company. They have a once a month seminar. John Heyer lives in Puerto Rico. He says, I pay taxes when I come up to the mainland, but when I'm in Puerto Rico, I don't pay taxes on my business. He knows the tax code. He's the only attorney that, 3 years ago, that practices before the IRS that has never lost a tax case. So but he's expensive, $600 an hour.
Yes. What is his name again, Jim?
John Heyer, Hyre. He's very good attorney. He's very sarcastic with people. He's been sarcastic with me, but that's fine. He likes insulting people quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
But you take it with a grain of salt because he's got so much knowledge to learn.
Yes. Okay, you are giving the knowledge, you are giving the information. You are saving me a lot of money.
That's
okay,
good.
and Jim, thank you so much. I think we need to close right now because it's an hour and a half. We want to take more time, also from your time too. We are so glad that you shared all this information with us. I'm pretty sure a lot of people want to hear more about you or more in detail. What about if we maybe in the near future we can schedule another live or another meeting, or maybe a private meeting with you, Jim, with the people who is more interested, yes, and
Yeah.
knows more on about this on details. I'd like to do that.
I
Yeah.
signed up already.
Yes,
And
now you
I
have to
also,
leave, Jim.
not to do a sales pitch, but to do a sales pitch. I do a lot of the presentations through TRIA,
Uh-huh.
on all these different subjects. And it's, if you're a member of TRIA, it's free. If not, usually it's $10. Where else can you get that much information for that little money type thing?
That's true.
That's true.
That's
Mhm.
very true. That's very true. Well, Jim, I think it's been amazing. I have asked a lot of questions. I'm sorry, guys, if you guys had a lot of questions too. I took over. But it's definitely, Jim, an honor to have you here. Spending time with you is been great. I have learned a lot, and I cannot wait to have the private session,
Yes.
like Nathy said.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you,
Jim.
Natalia, for inviting me to your group.
Thank you,
Whatever.
Jim. Thank you for
Absolutely.
always being so kind with us. Thank you for
Yeah.
always share all the information, because you are kind of that person that always you are be with for all of us. And also very grateful that Jim is with us right now, and all the time that you have any questions, you call him, you text him, and he's always open to help. Thank you so much for being here, Jim. Thank you. Mhm.
You're welcome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
See ya.